right. Hello again, adventures, and welcome to another exciting daily vlog. This is daily vlog number 269. Nice. So, today, something amazing has been announced. Just found this tweet on, or a bunch of different people I follow on Twitter were tweeting about this Polygon article. I'll have the article linked in the description so that you guys can read it as well. However, the gist of it is there's going to be a new magazine for TTRPG fans called Horizons. And according to the article that I read over relatively quickly, so it's possible I might have missed a few details. It is meant to kind of fill the hole left when Dragon Plus, which was the digital version of Dragon Magazine, ceased existing back in 2022. And the reason that is important is because Dragon Magazine and Dungeon Magazine were massive parts of the tabletop RPG space for a long time, and they were a massive part of Dungeons and Dragons. So, to start off with, I want to talk about the original magazines that this that Horizons has claimed that they're kind of filling that void. So, way back in, I don't know, it was either the late 80s or very, very late 70s. There were magazines that were published. I don't remember which one came first, but eventually there were two magazines that were published by, I think they started with TSR, and then when it transferred over to Wizards of the Coast started publishing them. But they were called Dungeons Magazine and Dragons Magazine. And what they were was not so much like a Game Informer where it's like, oh, we're going to review all these different things. They were actually magazines that were designed to supplement the game. Dungeon Magazine was designed mostly towards DMs. And what I mean by that is a lot of the articles that came out in Dungeon Magazine were like Ed Greenwood would write about the Forgotten Realms and just put massive amounts of lore in. Like he was a regular contributor to Dungeon Magazine, I think for most of its lifespan. And then he would have other things like it would publish adventures in there, like pre-written a one-shot adventures that you could run and things like that. So it was a really, really useful tool for dungeon masters. You'd also get every so often like monster stat blocks and stuff like that. But it was, again, it was geared mostly towards dungeon masters. Dragon Magazine was geared significantly more towards players. So they would have things like new player options or discussions about new classes, stuff like that. It was very, very much designed to appeal to players. And they were phenomenally useful. Again, I didn't start playing the tabletop version of D&D until 4th edition, and technically late 4th edition. But Dungeon Magazine and Dragon Magazine had so many additional options for character creation, and there were so many amazing adventures that you can actually still get them on I think on the DMs Guild. You can actually get dungeon annuals and dragon annuals, which are basically collections of the magazines, because they had really useful stuff in there. They had monster stat blocks, they had adventures for dungeon, they had they had a lot of different, like they would have new powers, they would have new kind of specialties, new Paragon paths, epic destiny, stuff like that. It was really, really good. And it meant that Wizards of the Coast could kind of piecemeal out little things without having to release a brand new book every time they wanted to release something interesting. And it was one of the things that kind of led to the rules bloat problem of 4th edition, and I don't know if the same thing happened in 3rd edition, because again, I wasn't reading the magazines then, so I'm not as familiar with the 3rd edition version. But they were both really, really fantastic magazines. Fast forward to 5th edition, Dungeon Magazine and Dragon Magazine had kind of been discontinued for the most part after 4th edition. And then they revised it with Dragon Plus, which was a digital magazine. I had the app. And unlike Dungeon Magazine, which again was really just meant to be a place for dungeon masters to go get ideas, learn about what other dungeon masters were doing, and just kind of grow the community, and Dragon Magazine, which was the same thing, but it was for players. Dragon Plus was advertising. It was a giant ad. Now, it started off with some interesting things, like they would highlight some stuff from the DM's Guild. So it was, I always hoped that I might get into Dragon Plus as a way to advertise my Dragon Knight class. Because they did do that. They would highlight a particular author on there and talk about some of the stuff that they published. I was never asked to be in it. That in and of itself was very, very cool. The rest of the magazine was for the most part ads for D&D products that were disguised as articles and stuff like that. It really wasn't a great thing. People didn't really enjoy it because, again, the thing that made Dragon Magazine and Dungeon Magazine so important was the fact that they were geared towards the people playing, and they weren't trying to sell you anything. They were meant to form a sense of community. And they did that really, really well. Now, when we're looking at Horizons, which is this new this new magazine, I'm hoping that they kind of learned from the mistakes of Dragon Plus, and I don't think they can really do what Dragon Plus did wrong, because again, Dragon Plus started off kind of as a way to celebrate the community, and very quickly turned into marketing. Which again, I have a degree in marketing. Marketing is important. As much as a lot of people think like anyone that works in marketing is this evil, disgusting person that's trying to steal your money from you, they're not. 9 times out of 10, most of the people I've met in marketing are really wonderful and nice people that just want people to know about the products that their company sells. And that's 90% of your marketing budget is just what's called product recognition. Meaning 90% of your marketing budget is just convincing people that you exist. Nonsense, right? So, because Horizons is not owned by Hasbro or anything like that, I don't think that they can actually become a marketing tool. And the way that they're pitching themselves right now, effectively, I'm going to read their Horizons is published by a group called Wild Mage Press. They have a website, wildmagepress.com. I'll have that linked in the description as well. And the website right now, the landing page is Time to Horizons launched. 14 days, 20 hours, 28 minutes, and 3, 2, 1, 0 seconds. And then, yeah, so it's counting down to the first release, which is cool. I'm going to read their description. So, with a new release every quarter, Horizons is the perfect way to bring even more fun and inspiration to your tabletop games with epic new monsters, drop-in locations, spells, magic items, adventures, and more. Each issue contains 3 articles designed with 5th edition in mind, 1 article for a featured tabletop RPG system, upcoming Pathfinder 2nd edition and Candela Obscura. The Desk of Many Thoughts, a nerdy op-ed column, a plethora of gorgeous illustrations. We work with amazing designers, illustrators, testers, and editors to make every Horizons article polished, balanced, and easy to incorporate into your own campaigns. So, from that description alone, Horizons, to me, feels like a replacement for Dungeon Magic magazine more so than Dragon magazine, which is perfectly fine. Again, the reason that there were two different magazines instead of Dungeons and Dragons magazine is because the subject matter that each group is interested in, is very, very different. So that's perfectly fine. The issues that I have with it thus far. 3 articles designed with 5th edition in mind. Here's something that a lot of people don't like. If you are making tabletop RPG content, you have to make something that acknowledges 5th edition. 5th edition is by far the most played RPG in the world. It makes up a decent amount, a majority of people that play tabletop RPGs, and by majority I mean more than 51% or more than 50%, play D&D either exclusively or regularly. So I get focusing on D&D 5th edition. That's how they are going to get people to read. If you do not have 5th edition content, they're not going to survive. They need to get readership so they can sell. I don't know how they are planning on making money on this. My assumption is going to be it's going to be a combination of, I'm assuming you're going to have to pay for the magazine in some way, shape, or form. And then I'm also going to assume that they're going to have some kind of advertisements linked to it. If it's a digital magazine, they'll have maybe banner ads or just something like that. If it's a physical magazine, they will probably have ads like every other magazine that has ever existed. You'll have full page ads and quarter page ads. Those are not bad, guys. Trust me on this one. So in order for those ads to be worth anything, in order for them to be able to make money off those ads, they have to have people reading the magazine. And so by making content for 5th edition to the D&D, they're almost guaranteeing that they're going to have an audience, because the 5th edition audience base is ravenous for new content. They really, really are. It's why the homebrew scene is as vibrant as it is. It's why the OGL debacle was as big as it was. Everyone wants to talk about 5th edition. Good, bad, otherwise, they want to talk about 5th edition. So that's a way that they're going to get eyes on their magazine. However, while I do believe that a majority of the marketplace is 5th edition, I do not believe it is a supermajority anymore. Supermajority is a term we actually use in Congress in the United States. But a supermajority is basically at least 2/3 of the voting. And the thing in Congress, the reason a supermajority matters is a president can't veto something that has a supermajority, because a supermajority can override a presidential veto. And that's true in I believe that's true in all levels of government. If the Congress, because governors can veto the state Congress, which has been happening a lot in Wisconsin, because we have a Republican majority Congress and we have a Democratic governor, whom I have opinions on that I won't share here. But so when I say supermajority, I mean, yes, I believe that the majority of the market is D&D 5th edition. I do not believe, in this case, 75% of the market is D&D. There are so many RPGs now, and a lot of them have been gaining steam against D&D for years. For decades, actually. And so I think if you're only going to be doing 4 articles per quarterly magazine, and this is only 4 times a year, only 4 articles and 3 of them are going to be 5th edition articles, I think that's a little bit of overkill. with the just massive amount of really popular tabletop RPGs out there, I think Horizon could get away with 2 5th edition articles and then 2 non 5th edition articles. That they would probably want to start with some more popular TTRPGs, but we'll get to that in just a second here. But I really think Horizons could fill a void in the marketplace right now by being the place where people that regularly play 5th edition or exclusively play 5th edition are actually introduced to other games. Now, again, because Horizons seems to be focused on Dungeon Masters, I don't believe it's going to be as effective at introducing new people. Because, again, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but up until the most recent PHB, Wizards of the Coast expected Dungeon Masters to be their marketing arm to get new players. I will tell you, most, if not all, of the people I have ever met that get into D&D get into it because of a Dungeon Master or a Game Master. Just tabletop RPGs in general. Game Masters are the ones that are recruiting new players. Does that mean it's impossible for someone that just plays to go, hey, you should come join us? No, it does happen, but it's significantly more often that Dungeon Masters are getting players, new players into the game. That also means that they're tapped out as far as introducing new things. I think Horizons could be a really valuable tool to introduce people to the whole world of tabletop RPGs instead of just D&D. If they were to have part of the magazine be player focused, which generally means new player options or build guides, things like that that are going to be more interesting to players than they are to DMs. Now, I mentioned before, I'm not a fan of quote-unquote build guides in general on YouTube, because 9 times out of 10, a build guide on YouTube is, this is how you min-max and misinterpret a rule in order to break the game. And I'm not a big fan of that. But I did do an entire series called D&D Deep Dive, where the entire purpose of it was just to talk about how different options could be used in a variety of different situations. And that's what I do with Essential Essence 20. I just focus on, okay, what's an interesting or unique way that you could use this ability? How many different ways can you use that ability? And I would love to see something like that in Horizons. As of right now, it doesn't seem like that is going to be a focus for it. Which, again, this is the first issue of a brand new magazine. They're going to go through growing pains. Thank you, phone. It doesn't matter how much experience they have creating this magazine. Doesn't matter if they literally just poached the entire Dungeon magazine and the entire Dragon magazine staff and they just brought them over to make Horizons. They didn't do that, by the way. But it wouldn't matter if they did, because a new product is always going to go through growing pains. You cannot anticipate how it's going to react in the market until it's in the market. So Horizons is not going to be the magazine that is described forever. Unless they make some decisions like, no, this is how it's going to be, this is how it's always going to be, and then Horizons will probably die. But I do think it could be something cool. The second thing that I'm less than pleased about, and again, I believe this is mostly due to the fact that they need eyeballs on the magazine. One article for a featured TTRPG system, upcoming Pathfinder 2nd Edition and Candela Obscura. 2 of the most popular tabletop RPGs. Now, I'm not saying that Candela Obscura is played anywhere near as much as Pathfinder 2nd Edition, but Candela Obscura is published by the most profitable live stream, live play in the world. I love Critical Role. I think the people over there are amazing and wonderful. They create a great product. They do not need more marketing. They just don't. They have a fantastic marketing department. I know their head of marketing. I've had conversations with her. She's amazing. Love her to death. They don't need to be featured in this. Just flat out. But again, it makes sense that they're doing it because just whispering the words Critical Role will get everybody to look at your stuff. So again, I understand why they are doing this. Pathfinder 2nd Edition does not need to be featured in any way, shape, or form. I have already talked about the horrible things that Paizo does to their employees, the horrible things that Paizo does to their fans. I am not a supporter of Pathfinder. If you like them, that is perfectly fine. You're allowed to be wrong. They don't need more marketing. They have plenty of marketing. But again, Horizons need eyeballs. What I'm hoping, I would love to see them feature Essence 20 maybe, which, to be fair, Essence 20 probably doesn't need a massive amount of marketing because, again, Renegade Game Studios is a big company, and they have a really successful RPG under their belt already in Vampire the Masquerade. It's one of the more played non-D&D tabletop RPGs. But I would love to see things like Ironheart, the tabletop RPG that I backed a few months ago, where it's a solo RPG about you and your robot, your mech buddy. I still love that. I love the idea of it. Or 13th Age would be really cool. I'd love to see Draw Steel get some features in Horizons. Draw Steel is Matt Colville's new tabletop RPG. I'd love to see the Cypher system get shown off in there. Or any of the Age system games get shown off in there. Dune, the Dune tabletop RPG would be cool to see in there. Savage Worlds would be cool to see in there. Any of the 111 billion Powered by the Apocalypse games, I'd love to see show up there. The ones that I'm not interested in seeing show up in there are Pathfinder, Candela Obscura, and Daggerheart. Again, it's not about Pathfinders because I don't like them, but it's not because I don't like Candela Obscura. I think it's great. I think it's a fantastic, more short-term focused tabletop RPG. I think it's really, really cool. It does a lot of things that I haven't seen other systems do. That's great. I love Daggerheart. I think it's a phenomenal system. Specifically, I think the initiative system that they have in there is just interesting. I think it's really, really cool and adds kind of almost a gamble to combat that just isn't there in other systems. But I don't think they need to be featured in Horizons, because they're already going to have shit tons of press. I would much rather see much smaller games or games that just don't really get a lot of press that are really, really interesting. Something as simple as like the One Ring RPG. It's a massive, massive franchise. You know, the Lord of the Rings franchise is massive. Prime is currently butchering it with their Rings of Power series. The Hobbit films are really, really big. The Lord of the Rings films were really, really big. They are coming out with Lord of the Rings video games that are getting tons and tons of press. I know a lot of people that have no idea that the One Ring RPG system exists. To be perfectly honest, I'm not 100% certain that it's still being published or anything like that. I know I own it, but they might have just decided to not deal with it anymore. Stuff like that, I think it'd be really, really cool in the there. So anyway, overall, I am very much excited about Horizons. I think it's really, really cool. I think this first issue is going to have issues because that's how making things works. but it is going to set the tone for the magazine going forward. And if they do this correctly and get lucky, because that's the other thing about this, there are a lot of really, really solid, amazing products that fail. Not because they did anything wrong, but just because the market didn't work in their favor. Like a good example, the new Transformers movie. From everything that I'm hearing about it, it's a great movie, but it bombed at the box office. The reason why? Two things. One, Hasbro fucked up because they marketed it like shit. So that's on them. But it's also just they're up against Beetlejuice, which is in I think its third week out there, and it's still really hot. There's other things going on in the world that are making it so that people just aren't going out to see that particular movie. Does that mean that it's solely exclusively that, oh, Hasbro just fucked up? No, there's other things. Like sometimes things just don't land and we don't understand why. The Princess Bride was considered a flop until it became a cult classic and is by far one of the greatest movies ever made. Other things like Eyes Wide Shut with let's try this one more time. Stanley Kubrick's final movie. He died like 3 weeks after the final cut was finished. It did not do well in the theaters, but now is considered one of Kubrick's greatest films that he's made. And Stanley Kubrick is known as one of the greatest filmmakers of all time. He was absolutely brilliant. So I'm not saying that if they don't succeed, it's their own fault. There's so many different things, especially since they're going into a market that technically doesn't really exist right now. They're trying to create a market. And what I mean by that is right now, at least according to that article, the only real tabletop RPG focused magazine is made by Games Workshop, which publishes a magazine called White Dwarf. I have no idea what White Dwarf is as far as like the content in it, but if it's made by who is it? Games Workshop. Games Workshop creates the Warhammer universe. So I would assume White Dwarf, looking at their 500 issue thing, I'm looking at it, and it's just covered in Warhammer 40K, Warhammer Age of Sigmar. It looks like it is a Games Workshop advertising the thing. So as far as sorry, there was a gnat and I wanted to get rid of it. I apologize. As far as a magazine that is targeted towards just tabletop RPG players or tabletop RPG GMs in general, the market just doesn't exist. It used to exist. It died off. So Horizons is going to be trying to create its own market, and this is an unbelievably difficult thing to do. When it's done well, it is unbelievably accessible. If you can create your own market, you basically get to write your own paycheck. But not only does it have to be done well, you have to be lucky. And that's the thing about Horizons that makes me a little bit wary. We are in a worldwide economic, I wouldn't call it a full-on crisis, but the economies of every country in the world right now are not doing fantastic. It might have something to do with us doing massively stupid things in 2020 and 2021, but who knows? Every market in the world is not doing fantastic right now. In the U.S. specifically, inflation is really, really high. Unemployment is getting higher and higher and higher, mostly because full-time jobs are being replaced en masse with part-time jobs. Pay is not doing remarkably well. It's not a great time to be a hobby, especially an expensive hobby like playing tabletop RPGs. Is it as expensive as something like Warhammer? No. We are not quite to the levels of, here, I'm going to bankrupt myself so I can get another army. But being a tabletop RPG player is not cheap, especially if you play more than one game. Again, I try and get every Essence 20 sourcebook I can. A brand new sourcebook came out today. I can't afford it. Just flat out, I can't afford to get it. I might try and get it once I get my disability check next month. But I don't know. It's just very expensive. And that is just me following 2 different RPG systems. D&D and Essence 20. Now, Essence 20 is 4 different RPGs, so maybe that's my problem. But for people that like to have a lot of different RPGs available to them, it is a very expensive hobby. And that seems to be what Wild Mage Press, the people that are making Horizons, it seems to be that's what they want to foster, is people that don't exclusively play D&D. So, yeah, we'll see how it goes. Like I said, I'm excited about it. As long as I can afford it. If they charge for their first issue, I will be purchasing it. If they don't charge for their first issue, I will be reading it. I will probably do a review for it on here. I'm just excited about this. This is, again, I loved Dungeon Magazine. I loved Dragon Magazine. They were phenomenal. I didn't like Dragon Plus. Again, it just felt soulless and made by people that just didn't care. And that might have just been, it might not have been the people making it. It might have just been the people telling them what to make, which is a common problem with a lot of stuff that's been going on in D&D right now. But yeah, I would love, I want Horizons to eventually become what Dragon Magazine and Dungeon Magazine were, which was a celebration of the tabletop RPG community. That's what those magazines were. And it was lovely. And if that's what Horizons can become, it will be massive for this hobby. Because again, right now, I mean, there was an article that came out, I did a video on it, that basically talked about just how incredibly backstabbing and evil the indie RPG market is, where people literally just make up shit, horrible, disgusting shit about other designers in an attempt to make it so that their product doesn't sell. Like, it is an unbelievably cutthroat industry, and that's just the designer aspect. When you look at the player base, I mean, it is vicious with how often players are cutting down other players simply because of what system they enjoy. Oh, you enjoy D&D? Well, you're stupid and you don't understand that there's other markets out there. Oh, you enjoy World of Darkness? Well, then you're just hypersexed and just want to fuck everything. Oh, you enjoy Pathfinder? You're seriously messed up in the head. Just kidding. Pathfinder bros, don't run away. I mean, it's just this nasty infighting constantly that's hurting the hobby as a whole, because everyone assumes that the tabletop RPG market is a zero-sum game. If you're not familiar with the term, zero-sum game means that anytime one side goes up, the other side goes down, where the total sum of all the points, when you factor in increases and decreases in points, always comes out to 0. So the only way for someone to succeed is for someone else to fail. That's what a zero-sum game is. And the market itself is not a zero-sum game. That's not how it works. Capitalism doesn't generally work as a zero-sum system, because markets themselves are constantly changing and moving into the things like that. And a really popular product emerging in a new market can take market share away from another company, but they can also expand the market. And that's what needs to happen for the tabletop RPG. And it has been happening. Don't get me wrong, the tabletop RPG market is larger than it has ever been. But the constant infighting and the constant idea of you can only play one RPG, and the RPG that you choose defines who you are as a person. And if it's not the same as mine, then you are an evil, horrible human being that deserves to die. That's not okay, but that is the prevailing idea that I see in online discourse, and it just doesn't need to be. So Horizons could be something that, if they work well, first of all, another thing that happens, you create a new market and tons of people try to join. If Horizons does well, then we could see a renaissance of tabletop RPG focused publications, which, if they don't all focus on a single RPG and they do try and spread things out, could be absolutely wonderful for tabletop RPGs in general. Or it could turn into the current kind of clique-based RPG system where everybody has their own little clique that they stay in and you never venture outside of it. Who knows? I'm interested to see what happens. I'm also interested to hear what you guys think. Are you excited about a new tabletop RPG magazine? Do you not really care? Do you think this might be a bad thing because of how much they're focusing on 5th edition or Pathfinder or other things like that? You think they're just going to be, well, we're just going to focus on the popular ones and let indie RPGs just die? Let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, again, this is all for me today. I will see you guys next time. All right? Bye-bye.